Shadows stand upright on these streets of town. The orders of the soldier come straight from the crown. The rebellion in my nature is as hard as a fist. But why? Against whom does my rebellion exist? My brother, my son, my father, my friend? Why does the good man die in the end?
Alright, so welcome everybody to another episode of the Let's You Forget podcast, a historical podcast by Tenement Yard Media. I'm your host, Davey. And on this episode, we're going to talk about the Green Bay Massacre. Cool? And what surrounded this event was that back on January 5th, 1978, the military intelligence unit, which was like a special unit inside the Jamaican Defence Force, they shot and killed 5 men at the Green Bay shooting range in St. Catherine, right? And it's like a two-party. You see what I'm trying to say? We're gonna talk about the shooting itself at Green Bay in '78, and then we're going to talk about the events that unfolded after what took place at Green Bay. You understand? Like the consequences of that shooting. You understand? And yeah, we're gonna talk about that. Just a bit of disclaimer here. That for this episode, in writing this episode, I did use Born for Dead, A Journey. I don't remember the full name. Born for Dead by Larry Ghost, right? Personally, I don't like the book. I don't like it's a, like there's a lot of problems with the book, like separating it from like the controversy around the informants and stuff like that. Like after the book was published and stuff like that. Me personally, I just not like the book. You understand? There is some historical inaccuracies, especially around Jamaica 1950s and 60s in the book. But again, I know historical text, so I can't like, you know, compete in that. But it's more semi-ethnographic in its makeup, and that we're gonna have on the website. Like, upon the website, I'm gonna tell them to put that. Don't like, like upon the website to have like sources and stuff we use for like the episode and stuff. I'm gonna just have them put on special branch and put semi-ethnographic and put Born for Dead underneath it, because that's what it is. It's me trying to say. It's like, Gus doing a lot of interviews and stuff like that, and getting people perspective of what was taking place in Jamaica 70s and 80s and New York and stuff like that. So it's that. It's more anthropological. Is what I'm trying to say? So maybe because I may have problem with the historical inaccuracies. But separate from that, personally, I don't like the way she write about black people. Is what I'm trying to say? Larry Gus white. She white. She look white. I generally believe she's white. Right? If not, she white passing. Listen, she white. Me not like reading the book was like me never like how she write about black people. I'm gonna be super honest with you. Is what I'm trying to say. Most of the persons who she interview with are black Jamaicans, right? Me never like the way it rubbed me wrong. It really rubbed me wrong there. But for the sake of the episode, I did use it, and you're gonna hear a recording that she did in an interview with Netflix for a documentary about Jamaica. Closer to the end of the episode, we kind of use that as well. But we just want to know some me personally like the damn book. Cool? Alright. Vibes. So yeah. Alright, so this is Davey again doing editing, right? And I did go find my copy of the book, because I never want to look like I hate me that hate for hating sake. Like, more want to get a little glimpse of what I talk about what must say I never like how she write about black people, right? So I did get my copy, right, of Born for Dead. The full name is Born for Dead, A Journey Through the Jamaican Posse Underworld by Larry Ghost, right? So I did get my copy. I'm not going to do a passage. I'm going to do a passage. You understand? And the physical copy that I have is it's the one with the black and white cover. You have the one with like the you have another cover with the black, green, yellow, red, like the Rasta color. The copy that I have is the black and white cover, right? And this is on page 10. We're going to do a passage from page 10, right? And just a bit of background. This is her going to the FBI headquarters in New York, and she's talking to her agent who show her a videotape of a treat that was being held in Jamaica, right? I'm gonna read out the passage, right? Walk with me here. This is what Laura Gust write, okay? This is what she said. The videotape was part of the Gully's archival stash. Home videos of high times like posse dances and the annual West Indian Labor Day parade down Brooklyn's Eastern Parkway. But the video Shakan wants me to see was made in Kingston during one of the last treats that the Gully put on for the sufferers at home. These treats were held every Easter, a season of great celebration in Jamaica. In the days of slavery, Easter, like Christmas, was a time when masters might give their slaves a new article of clothing or a tiny ration of meat. Now the Gully posse's Don, Eric Chinaman Vassal, was continuing this tradition with funds derived from cocaine and heroin instead of sugar and rum. Now, people, tell me now, what we are doing so? Like, what we are doing so? Like, oh, what we are doing so? Like, what? Slavery? Like, we are equate? We're equating that culture in Jamaica with slavery? Slavery? What we are doing? Like, what? Like, what we are? Like, me not have the words to explain. And this is the thing, there's a lot of things we can equate back to the plantation. And there are some people who do it well. Dr. Deborah Thomas, she's an anthropologist at UPenn, does that well. Like, she balanced that. There's a bunch of academics who balance it. There's a bunch of journalists who does it really well. This this is not this weird. This is weird. It is weird. It's weird, right? So yeah, but that's not for sure. Some nobody that hate for hating sake. Like, this is her description of Black Jamaicans throughout the book in certain passages come across as very weird. I don't know what she did upon, but whatever she did upon when she write it, hopefully she come off. Cause this was published in mid 1990s. So, like, what? Yeah. But yeah, but that's what to know. Some never like the book. But yeah, I'm gonna go back to the episode. So yeah. So with all that out of the way, right, and all of my grievances, my disclaimer given, I'm gonna start the episode. Alright, so let me just set the scene, right? Of where we are in history. Alright? So it's the middle of the 1970s, and Jamaica is experiencing a state of political violence never before seen. In later years, historians and social scientists would deem it the island's unofficial civil war. And in a sponsored, big word right there, so sponsored, right? Back and forth between supporters of the ruling, traditionally left-leaning People's National Party, PNP, and the traditionally right-leaning Jamaica's Labour Party, JLP, Jamaica was at a standstill, right? By December 1976, Jamaica was going to have its general elections, and despite a state of emergency in place, political violence would continue to spiral out of control as both parties fought to gain leadership of the country. And it's within this tense atmosphere where many persons got caught up in this political crossfire, including reggae superstar Bob Marley. Now, there's a lot of hoopla whether the assassination attempt and Bob Marley is political or not. You may say it was a very tense time. We are work with it. We are work with it. All right. So on December 3rd, 1976, gunmen would blast their way through his home at 56 Hope Road, right? And in the aftermath of this assassination attempt on the reggae superstar's life, Marley, his wife Rita, and manager Dan Taylor was injured in the attack. Still, despite the shooting and his injuries, Marley showed up and performed at the Smile Jamaica concert on December 5th. Immediately after, Marley went into a self-imposed exile from Jamaica and relocated to England. No, you see this little snippet? This important. This important to the story. We'll soon get to that. Also, we have an episode called "The Time Bob Marley Beat Up Your Manager." That episode goes into a bit more around Bob Marley shooting and the exploitation of his imagery by the People's National Party and the election, all of that. So go listen to that episode if you want more on this. You understand? But just keep it in mind that this happened in 76 and this is important to the story, right? Now, in the wake of the 1976 December election, PMP would held on to their leadership of the government. But despite Marley's best effort, as the concert was to be used as a tool to bring peace to the island, the violence did not slow down. As such, political violence continued to plague Jamaica in 1977. According to the island's premier statistical institution, Statin, Jamaica's murder rate was 152 in 1970, where by the end of 1977, it was 397. And it is within this tense, violent political atmosphere, right, that this story of a state murder took place. Now, the Green Bay incident took place on January 5th, 1978, and involved the Jamaica Army killing 5 men. There is Trevor Clark, there is Norman Gutter Thompson, who was a former national footballer, there is Glenroy Richards, Howard Gargo Martin, and Winston Saddlehead Hamilton. Now, the men were from High Holborn and Gold Street areas of the traditional GLP stronghold area of Southside in Kingston Central. And in a report released by the Jamaica Defence Force, the JDF, the Army gave their version of what happened in the immediate aftermath of the shooting. Now, at the center of the incident was the Military Intelligence Unit, MIU, a covert branch of the JDF, which was established to deal with persons who were deemed a threat to the island's security. It was the members of MIU who was involved in the shooting, and according to them, they discovered armed men at the Green Bay shooting range in St. Catherine. According to them, a shootout transpired, and in what they claim as self-defense, right, they shoot back, thus killing the 5 men, right? However, during the shooting, persons escape, and the survivors would tell a completely different story from what was in the JDF report. Now, according to the survivors, they were actually set up by the MIU. Now, a coroner's report, this is important, a coroner's report backed this up when it later stated that the men were lured into an ambush with the promise of getting jobs, transporting some materials. I'm not gonna explain the materials, I'm gonna put it in an asterisks, right? Some materials to do bodyguard jobs. Bodyguard jobs in big asterisks. Right, this one. Zine? Big asterisks. Can't really say what for say on an episode or so. For just put 2 and 2 together. Do the maths with me. You understand? Just put 2 and 2 together. Now, there were actually 14 men who heard about this opportunity, but only 10 went, as some changed their mind or felt uneasy about the whole thing. Now, the survivors, there were 5, stated that on the morning of January 5th, they were picked up in Southside and then brought to the firing range at Green Bay, where they were told to stand in a group, after which they were shot at. Now, Delroy Griffiths, one of the survivors of the incident, recalled in detail what exactly happened in a 2012 interview with the Jamaica Observer. And we're going to have, somebody from the yard read what we say, so just listen keenly.
They promised us jobs paying $300 a week, which was big money in those times. Them times I used to run Lad Lane. After watching a show the night called Godfather, I heard the men talking about the trip and saying who don't come meet a big man who giving out work can't come again. But that was a trick to draw out everybody. I said I didn't want to know that there is work and I don't turn up for it, because I had my children going to school. So I said I was going for myself. They woke me up the morning and I told my baby mother that I would soon return. One of the youth was sleeping and I pushed my mouth up to kiss him and said, Paulette, but now I'm about to kiss him. I'll soon come back. And I put him down. They brought an ambulance and a van. I went into the blue van at Law Street. When we reached, my teeth were hurting me. They took us to a spot at Helshaw and told us, "Stay here, sir." They said that every man should stand one place, and they set us up in front of the general purpose gun, which we didn't know about. Then they took away the head one, saddlehead, to where the big gun was, give him one shot, and then turn the big gun on everybody. Anybody who was not hit by that gun, the maca that you had to run into would rip you up and tear you up. I ran away when the shooting started, and while I was going through the maca, I met up on a soldier, so I turned and ran off. He shot at me, and I ran away on a lonely road until I reached on a little hill with the sea below. I spent the entire day in the bushes and made my way down from the rocks toward the sea. When I saw some fishermen way out, I went on a rock and signaled an X sign to them. I took nearly 20 minutes to make the X sign, and I saw a man put up his hand. The fishermen came towards me and said I had to tell them what's going on. I said that the soldiers were coming, and if they saw us, they would spray us with bullets. The water over that side was cold and shark infested. My knees were knocking. I jumped off in the cold water, got into the boat, and they took me towards Greenwich Farm. When I reached there, I took off towards Caymanas Park, before realizing that I should be going the other way towards Southside. It was like I had lost my mind. I saw some men at a betting shop at Harbour Street and told them that they had just killed some men, and they said I was joking. By this time, the other men who escaped went through the maca and into the hills. As it turned out, every man who was killed had a bullet wound in his head. I escaped because I went to watch a movie called Honor Thy Father the night before, and seeing the guns and people saying hit the dirt. So I was crawling on my hands and knees when the firing started. Is that me use upon them?
Now, in the aftermath of the event, there would be plenty of commentary on what exactly transpired. Big Youth and Papa Kojak would release songs about the event. And then there is Dudley Thompson, a member of the PMP, who infamously stated, and I'm going to quote here, "No angels died at Green Bay," right? Now, according to the Gleaner, Thompson was also reported to have said, and I'm going to quote here again, the only thing that went wrong was that all of them were not killed, end quote. Now, ironically, a day after the incident on January 6, Thompson was sworn in as Minister of National Security. But in later years, he would apologize for his remark on the incident. Still, the damage was already done. For at this time, given Thompson's remarks, some persons were of the view that the men were alleged gang members aligned with GLP. And to this, political scientist Dr. Obika Gray, in his book, Demeaned but Empowered, the Social Power of the Urban Poor in Jamaica, this is what he stated.
That the gunmen were from the JLP enclave would also further the PNP's campaign to convince the public that the dead men were in fact part of a continuing plot to destabilize the government.
But some persons, including members of the Southside community, saw the incident as a coordinated attempt to get rid of JLP supporters in the Kingston Central area, whose MP, ironically, was actually the Prime Minister of Jamaica, Michael Manley. And it is to this Larry Gust, in her semi-ethnographic book, Born for Dead, A Journey Through the Jamaican Posse Underworld, stated this of the incident based on her interviews with persons.
In late 1977, a little cabal of rogue officers from the Jamaica Defence Force, loyal to Manley and convinced that the police were in Siaga's pocket, hatched a plot to destroy the JLP posse in South Side.
There's also a camp of persons, mostly those aligned with the PMP, who thought the incident was a ploy superheaded by JLP to smear the PMP government. No, I had to write that in the episode. I'm going to be super honest here. There's no evidence at all that JLP had anything to do with what happened at Green Bay. Like, well, I couldn't find any evidence of that. Or there's no evidence me could have found out there that JLP had anything to do with it. This was just like a rumor that was just like largely confined to PMP circles. Which was largely being said by people aligned with PMP. But there's literally no evidence of that, so it is whatever again. But soon after the incident, an official's inquiry and coroner's inquest took place in the Spanish Town Coroner's Court, which concluded what happened at Green Bay was a conspiracy to kill the men and that persons at the MIU were criminally responsible for the massacre. As such, by July 1978, warrants were issued for the soldiers involved, including the head of the operation, where charges of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder were brought against the soldiers. However, by 1981, some of the soldiers saw their charges drop, while for others, February 1982 saw them being acquitted due to lack of evidence. Right? Now, to all of this, right, there is still debate on the motivation and who was behind the events of the Green Bay Massacre. Like, you know, I see when I have situations like this with the right episodes, we draw for your academic. We draw for the people them who spend years of study. You understand? Study these things. Now, academic we draw for, you understand, is Amanda Sives, who spent years at the University of Liverpool, right, as a lecturer of politics, where in her book, Election, Violence and the Democratic Process in Jamaica, 1944 to 2007, she concluded this about the incident.
It is significant that neither party pursued the case while in government, and no one was ever held accountable for the deaths, highlighting that neither party was prepared to uncover the truth in open court.
Still, regardless, Delroy Griffiths still maintain to this day, that, and I'm going to quote here, is because an election was coming, why them kill the man them, end quote. So, there's that. Nevertheless, the event will largely be forgotten in Jamaican society as the years went by. That was until 2010 when the acclaimed filmmaker Storm Salter would release his debut film, Better Must Come. The award-winning film starring Sheldon Shepherd, Chris McFarlane, Everaldo Clearly, and Sky Gray dramatized the lives of the victims of the Green Bay Massacre.
With all due respect, how much the man them a work a week? 10? $15 for no lucky? Me willing to pay them $300 a week plus the weapon them. Me not gonna have a problem to find other people for work, you know. You want it? Or you don't want it?
Well, yeah, who want the job, you know, Souls?
Yeah.
Who have to meet the boss?
No, nevertheless, one of the things that the events of Green Bay expose is the loss of trust in the state by the general public, where many persons began to see themselves as pawns in this civil unrest. And as Dr. Gray states,
the attempted execution proved to be a huge political blunder, and it galvanized the ghetto. The veil had obscured the poor's perception of their condition and shrouded the extent to which they had become merely fodder in the communal wars.
Thus, motivated by the events of Green Bay, two political activists, I'm going to put political activists in big quotation marks. I just want to know using the area, so. So put two and two together, so. Right? Two political activists step in. There were Claudia Mossop, who was affiliated with the JLP, and Aston Bucky Marshall Thompson, who was aligned with the PMP. Now, soon after the massacre, the two men declared a truce, a peace treaty of some sort, to end the political violence that was, holding Jamaica in its grip. And out of this, the Central Peace Council, CPC, was formed to deal with the politically induced violence in affected communities. Now, a peace fund was also established to assist small businesses and social programs in these communities. Most notably, Edward Siaga, who was the head of the president of the JLP at the time and the opposition leader, and also the member of parliament of West Kingston, one of these, high risk constituencies, the political violence. Edward Siaga announced his intention to donate $5,000 of his salary towards the fund. This is Jamaica 1970s. Enough money that. You understand? All right. Likewise, the Gleaner also established a community peace fund. There were also peace marches in volatile communities like Tivoli Gardens and Arnett Gardens, where other political activists, again, big quotation marks here using Edward political activists mean, right, would declare their truce. Then, the Jamaica Council of Churches founded an advisory body to mediate this truce. However, the major highlight of this truce was a benefit concert, which, like the 1976 Mile Jamaica concert, was intended to address the violence plaguing the island, right? As Sid Massacre, Claudi's wife, stated in the 2018 Netflix documentary, remastered Who Shot the Sheriff?
It's all about unification. That is the reason why they came up with the idea of the One Love concert.
Now, with this, Claudie and Bucky traveled to the UK to convince Jamaica's biggest superstar, Bob Marley, to end his self-imposed exile and come home to headline the concert. This persuasion was successful as both men promised Bob that he would be safe. Plus, Marley already had a bit of relationship with Claudie, so there was a bit of trust there, right? And Sid Massacre further, stated on this, in said documentary.
Bob and Claudie grew up in the same community, and they were boys together. They kept their friendship all along.
Now, the concert was held on April 22, 1978, right, at the island's National Stadium, right? It will be dubbed the One Love concert. And a number of the island's top musicians performed, including Peter Tosh, Robbie Shakespeare, Culture, and Dennis Brown. And during Jacob's Miller set, he would call Claudie and Bucky as well as Tony Welch on stage, and the men would, hug in a circle. It was a very scenic moment. But it was Bob Marley's performance that would garner the most attention and will largely be the one that would be remembered in history. While him and his band was performing his hit Jamming, he called both Manley and Siaga on stage. And a show of symbolic unity, the two political leaders would clasp their hands with Marley's. And this act and the entire One Love concert serve as hope that the political violence that has brought the island to its knee would come to an end. And that hope lasted for almost 3 seconds because it was very short-lived hope. The violence just got worse. It just got worse in the immediate aftermath of the concert. You understand? Sometime after the concert, Claudie stated publicly that there were external forces trying to derail this peace effort. By May, the Jamaica Council of Churches ended their mediation roles and the Gleaner closed their fund. By November, the newspaper reported that the money which was being donated to the CPC went missing, right? And by February of 1979, Massacre was killed by the police. According to reports, he was shot over 40 times. Months later, in 1980, Bucky Marshall was killed in New York City. Then in 1995, when Larry Gus published Born for Dead, she mentioned that through her interviews with Trevor Phillips, the leader of the CPC, the Central Peach Council, she learned that the concert actually further facilitated the political violence on the island. Allegedly, guns to be distributed to political activists, again, political activists in quotes here, were hidden inside equipment to be used at the concert, as Gust wrote in the book.
On the night of the show, Chris Blackwell, Marley's producer at Island Records, sent someone to the stadium to tell Trevor that this equipment was on the wharf waiting for clearance. Blackwell had no idea what else was inside the metal cases. Trevor made an urgent call to Dudley Thompson, the Minister of National Security, to clear the containers. It was not until a few days later that Trevor found out about the guns at a post-concert meeting of the Central Peace Council.
Gust would also further reiterate this piece of information in the aforementioned Netflix documentary. Here she goes.
Bob Marley never knew this, but one of the tragic ironies of the One Love Peace concert was that, as I learned from one of my sources, is not peace we are dealing with here, is pieces, meaning firearms. Guns were brought in some of the sound equipment that came in from the United States, and they were later distributed to gang members of the JLP.
Yes, so that's what she got from her interviews. What I said before, me not like the book. Me not like what she write about black people. So they can do with her information as you will. You understand? Do with her information as you will. Okay? But that's her interviews, and she has done the most interviews around this period of Jamaica history. So it is what it is, right? And so throughout the rest of the decade, Jamaica was brought to its knees as political violence rocked the nation, ultimately reaching its peak in 1980. But within that history is a story of the lives affected by the killing at Green Bay and the slippery slope that came after.
And with that, we call an end to today's episode. To view the sources used in this episode and our recommendations to learn more about the topic, visit our website at tenementyardmedia.com. A transcript of this episode will be available 5 days after it has been posted to podcast outlets. And remember, this is a conversation we really want to hear from you. Follow our social media pages at tenementyard_ on both Instagram and Twitter to view additional postings on this episode and updates on other content created by Tenement Yard Media. We're open to conversation about this and other episodes, and really all happenings around Caribbean history and culture. Just a quick note before we leave, we're over on Patreon at patreon.com/tenementyardmedia if you would like to support the show with a monthly donation of as little as $1. You can also make a donation of your choice at tenementyardmedia.com. Until next time, and this has been Lest We Forget, a historical podcast from Tenement Yard Media.